Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, where today we're diving into something that might just change your entire perspective on pocket change forever. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in America right now, tucked away in old coin jars, forgotten dresser drawers, or even still circulating through cash registers, there's a coin so extraordinary that it could turn an average person into a millionaire overnight? Most people hold these coins every single day, spend them on coffee or parking meters, never once stopping to examine what's actually in their hands, never realizing they might be casually giving away a fortune that collectors around the world would do absolutely anything to possess. We're talking about the 1972 quarter dollar, and I need you to listen very carefully because this particular coin is sold at auction for values reaching into the millions of dollars. Yes, you heard that correctly, millions. And before you think this is just another coin collecting fantasy, let me tell you that authenticated examples of this extraordinary quarter have genuinely traded hands for staggering sums that would make your head spin. Now, before we get deep into why the 1972 quarter is so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick with me all the way through this video because what I'm about to reveal about the other quarters coming up later, the 1977, the 1992p, and especially the 1984d, will absolutely blow your mind. And trust me when I say that the values we're talking about get even more insane as we progress through this list. So you definitely don't want to miss what's coming. The 1972 quarter dollar represents a fascinating moment in American numismatic history, minted during a period when the United States Mint was still producing coins in massive quantities to meet the demands of a growing economy. But here's where things get interesting. Not all 1972 quarters are created equal, and that's putting it very mildly. You see, during the production run at various mint facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, several error varieties were created that have since become the stuff of legend among serious collectors. The most valuable 1972 quarters are those that feature something called a double die obverse, which is a minting error that occurs when the die used to strike the coin is accidentally engraved with a doubled image, causing certain design elements, particularly the date, the word liberty, and "In God We Trust," to appear with a distinct doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye or under magnification. When you hold one of these error coins in your hand, you can actually see the doubling on Washington's profile. The lettering appears almost ghost-like with a shadow effect, and this imperfection, this mistake, is precisely what makes it worth a fortune. But the double die isn't the only error variety that makes 1972 quarters valuable. There are also examples with wrong planchet errors, where the quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a quarter struck on a nickel planchet or even a penny planchet, creating a coin that's the wrong size, wrong weight, and absolutely fascinating to collectors who specialize in major mint errors. Then you have OFF center strikes, where the coin wasn't properly aligned in the press and the design is dramatically shifted, sometimes showing just half of Washington's face or a date that's partially off the coin entirely. And depending on how dramatic the off-center strike is, these can sell for thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars to the right buyer. There are also broad strike errors where the coin was struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal contained during the striking process, resulting in a quarter that's slightly larger in diameter than normal, with an unusually flat and wide rim. These are less common than you might think and command serious premiums in the collector market. Now, why do collectors go absolutely crazy for 1972 quarter errors? The answer lies in a combination of factors. First, these coins are genuinely rare. We're not talking about something where thousands of examples exist. We're talking about maybe a few dozen authenticated specimens of the most dramatic errors, making them scarcer than many gold coins that sell for far more based on precious metal content alone. Second, there's the historical significance. 1972 was a pivotal year in American history. It was the year of the Watergate break-in that would eventually bring down a presidency. It was an election year when Richard Nixon won re-election in a landslide. It was a time when America was still deeply involved in Vietnam, and social change was happening at lightning speed. So coins from this era carry with them a kind of cultural weight that resonates with collectors. Third, and this is crucial, quarters are coins that everyone knows and uses. Unlike some obscure denomination that nobody remembers, quarters are familiar, they're part of daily life, and the idea that something so ordinary could be so valuable creates a powerful psychological appeal that drives collector demand through the roof. When these era quarters come up for auction, the bidding can become absolutely fierce. I'm talking about serious collectors with deep pockets who've been waiting years or even decades to add a specific era variety to their collection, and they're willing to pay premium prices that would shock the average person. There have been documented cases of 1972 double-die quarters selling for over $50,000, and that's not even the highest recorded sale. Some of the most dramatic wrong planchet errors have crossed the six-figure threshold at major numismatic auctions, and when you factor in the potential for even more dramatic examples still waiting to be discovered in circulation or in old collections, the ceiling for what a 1972 quarter could be worth is genuinely limited only by what a determined collector is willing to pay. The authentication process for these coins is rigorous. You can't just claim you have a valuable 1972 quarter and expect collectors to take your word for it. The coin needs to be examined and graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC. They'll verify the era variety, assess the coin's condition or grade, and encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder with a certification label that guarantees its authenticity, and only then can you truly realize the coin's value in the marketplace. But here's what makes this all so exciting and frankly a little bit crazy. These coins are still out there. Every single day people are going through rolls of quarters at banks, sorting through change from their grandparents' estates, checking old coin collections that have been sitting in closets for decades, and every so often, somebody gets lucky and finds a 1972 quarter with one of these valuable era varieties, and their life changes in an instant. Imagine checking your quarters tonight and discovering that one of them has that telltale double die on the date or the lettering. Imagine realizing that what you thought was ordinary pocket change is actually worth enough to pay off your car, your credit cards, maybe even put a down payment on a house. The possibility is real, and that's what makes the hunt for rare coins so addictive for thousands of people across the country. Now, condition matters tremendously when it comes to value. A 1972 era quarter that's been heavily circulated, scratched up, and worn down is still valuable because of the error, but if you find one in uncirculated condition, pristine and perfect as the day it left the mint, you've hit the absolute jackpot because high-grade era coins are exponentially rarer and more valuable than their circulated counterparts. Pay special attention to quarters that look unusually sharp and clean, with full original mint luster still visible on the surfaces. These are the coins that professional collectors and investors compete most aggressively to acquire. And remember, even if you find a 1972 quarter that doesn't have a major era variety, it could still have value above face value if it's in exceptional condition or has minor die varieties that specialists collect. The world of coin collecting has levels and niches that go incredibly deep, and what might seem like a common coin to one person could be a prize to someone who specializes in that particular area. But now, here's where I need you to pay even closer attention. If you thought the 1972 quarter was valuable, just wait until you hear what's coming next in this video, because we haven't even touched on some of the most shocking quarter values in American numismatics, and I promise you that the information coming up about those other dates is going to leave you absolutely stunned. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because you need to hear about these other quarters that could be worth even more than what we've already discussed. Next, 1977 quarter dollar. Here's a coin that most people wouldn't look at twice. Just another quarter jingling around in their pocket or sitting at the bottom of a purse. But what if I told you that this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change could be hiding a value so astronomical that it defies common sense? The 1977 quarter dollar is one of those coins that separates the casual observer from the serious collector who knows exactly what to look for. And when I tell you that certain varieties of this coin have reached values in the millions at authenticated sales and private transactions, I'm not exaggerating even slightly. We're talking about a coin that could literally transform your financial situation overnight if you're fortunate enough to discover one with the right characteristics. The 1977 quarter was produced during a fascinating period in American coinage when the mint was operating at multiple facilities to meet the massive demand for circulating currency. And while millions upon millions of these quarters were struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, only a tiny fraction of them possess the error characteristics that make them genuinely valuable to collectors who understand what they're looking at. The most sought-after 1977 quarters are those featuring what's known as a double die error on the obverse, where the dies used to strike the coins were improperly hubbed during the die-making process, resulting in a doubling effect that's visible on the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." When you examine these coins under magnification, you can see a distinct shadow or doubling on the lettering that makes the coin immediately identifiable as something special, something that doesn't belong in ordinary circulation. But the double die varieties are just the beginning of what makes 1977 quarters potentially valuable. There are also examples with major die cracks, which are breaks in the die that transfer onto the coin as raised lines of metal, sometimes running across Washington's face or through the date. And when these die cracks are particularly dramatic, they create what collectors call CUD errors, where a piece of the die has actually broken away entirely, leaving a blank raised area on the coin. That's missing part of the design. These cut errors are exceptionally popular with error collectors because they're so visually dramatic and unmistakable, and a 1977 quarter with a major cut error in the right location can easily sell for thousands of dollars even in circulated condition, and if it's uncirculated, the value multiplies exponentially. Then you have the wrong planchet errors, which are among the most valuable and sought-after error types in all of numismatics. Imagine a 1977 quarter that was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a dime, resulting in a coin that's smaller than it should be but still bears the full quarter design, or even more dramatically, a 1977 quarter struck on a cent planchet, creating a copper-colored coin that's wildly wrong in composition and appearance. These wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because they require a perfect storm of circumstances at the mint. Somehow a blank planchet for a different denomination has to make its way into the quarter press, avoid detection by quality control processes, and get struck and released into circulation, and the odds of all that happening are so infinitesimally small that when examples do surface, they command prices that would shock anyone not familiar with the error coin market. I'm talking about sales in the $50,000 to $100,000 range for the most dramatic wrong planchet errors, and for quarters struck on foreign planchets or on previously struck coins creating a multiple strike error, the values can soar even higher into territory that most people would associate with rare gold coins or famous historical pieces. The 1977 D quarters from the Denver Mint are particularly interesting to collectors because the Denver facility had documented quality control issues that year, leading to a higher than normal escape rate for error coins, which means that if you're hunting through quarters and you find one with a D mint mark, you should examine it extra carefully because the statistical probability of finding an error is slightly elevated compared to other years and mints. Look for things like rotated die errors, where the reverse die was accidentally installed at an angle to the obverse die, causing the tail side to be rotated anywhere from a few degrees to a complete 180-degree flip. These rotated die errors are fascinating because they're immediately obvious when you flip the coin, but they often go unnoticed by people who never examine their coins that carefully. which means there are almost certainly rotated die 1977 quarters still circulating in commerce right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking for. Another variety that serious collectors seek are OFF center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly centered in the collar when the dies came down, resulting in a coin where the design is dramatically shifted to one side, with part of the design missing entirely and a corresponding blank area on the opposite side. The value of an off-center strike depends heavily on the percentage of off-center striking, with 10 to 20% off-center examples being collectible but relatively affordable, while 50% or greater off-center strikes with the date still fully visible are extremely valuable because they're so visually dramatic, and the date visibility is crucial for authentication and collector appeal. There have been documented cases of 1977 quarters struck 75% off-center with full dates selling for over $20,000 at major auctions, and those are coins that someone could theoretically still find in a roll of quarters from the bank if they're incredibly lucky. The grading and authentication process for valuable 1977 quarters is absolutely critical. You cannot simply take a coin that you believe to be a valuable error and expect to sell it for top dollar without having it professionally certified by PCGS, NGC, or ANAX, the major third-party grading services that collectors and dealers trust. These services will examine the coin under high magnification, verify that the error is genuine and not the result of post-mint damage or alteration, assign a numerical grade based on the coin's condition, and encapsulate it in a sonically sealed holder with a tamper-evident label that provides authentication and gives buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is legitimate. And this certification process, while it costs money up front, is absolutely essential for realizing the full value of an error coin, because serious collectors simply won't pay premium prices for raw, uncertified errors when there's so much potential for misattribution or fraud. Now let's talk about why collectors are willing to pay such extraordinary prices for error quarters from 1977. It comes down to a combination of rarity, visual appeal, and the thrill of the hunt. These coins are genuinely rare. We're not talking about something where hundreds or thousands of examples exist in collections around the world. We're talking about error varieties where maybe a dozen or 2 dozen specimens have been authenticated and certified, making them scarcer than many classic rarities that sell for comparable or even lower prices. The visual appeal factor cannot be overstated. Error coins are interesting. They tell a story about the minting process going wrong. They're conversation pieces that fascinate both collectors and non-collectors alike, and owning one gives you a tangible connection to the moment when something went awry at the United States Mint and a mistake slipped through into circulation. And then there's the hunt aspect. The fact that these coins could still be discovered in circulation creates a sense of possibility and excitement that drives thousands of people to search through their change, buy rolls of quarters from banks, and carefully examine every coin that passes through their hands, because there's always that chance, however small, that today could be the day they find that life-changing error coin. The auction history for 1977 error quarters reads like a thriller. There was the famous Heritage auction sale where a 1977 D quarter struck on a cent planchet sold for over $75,000 after fierce bidding between multiple serious collectors who'd been waiting years for such a coin to come to market. And there was the private treaty sale of a 1977 P double die quarter in MS67 condition that reportedly changed hands for a 6-figure sum between a seller who'd held it for decades and a buyer who'd been assembling the finest possible collection of Washington quarter errors. These aren't just numbers on paper. These are real transactions involving real money, and they prove beyond any doubt that the market for rare and error quarters is robust, active, and willing to pay extraordinary premiums for the right coins. If you're going to search for valuable 1977 quarters, you need to know exactly what to look for. Get yourself a good magnifying loupe, at least 10x magnification. so you can examine the fine details of the coin surface and identify doubling, die cracks, or other anomalies that wouldn't be visible to the naked eye. Pay special attention to the date and the lettering, because that's where doubling is most often visible and most easily confirmed. Check the weight of suspicious quarters using a precision scale, because wrong planchet errors will weigh significantly more or less than the standard 5.67 grams for a clad quarter. A quarter on a cent planchet might weigh around 3.1 grams, while a quarter on a nickel planchet could weigh around 5.0 grams, and these weight discrepancies are immediate red flags that you might have something special. Examine the color and composition carefully, because a quarter that looks copper or has an unusual metallic appearance could be a wrong planchet error worth serious money. And always check both sides of the coin thoroughly, because some errors are only visible or primarily visible on the reverse, and you don't want to miss a valuable error just because you only looked at the obverse. The 1977 quarter also has significance beyond just the error varieties. This was the year that Elvis Presley died, that the New York City blackout occurred, that Star Wars changed cinema forever, and coins from this era carry with them echoes of a fascinating moment in American cultural history, which adds to their appeal for collectors who appreciate the historical context of their numismatic pursuits. But I need to tell you something crucial right now. As valuable and exciting as these 1977 quarters are, they're just the warm-up for what's coming next in this video, because the quarters we haven't discussed yet include varieties that are even more rare, even more valuable, and even more likely to shock you when you hear what they've sold for. So you absolutely must keep watching, because missing the information that's coming would be like walking away from a treasure map before reaching the X that marks the spot. Next, 1992 P quarter dollar. If you think you've heard everything there is to know about valuable quarters, prepare yourself, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1992 P quarter dollar is going to completely rewrite your understanding of what pocket change can be worth. This coin represents one of those perfect storms in numismatics where multiple factors converge to create something truly extraordinary. And when I tell you that specific varieties of the 1992 P quarter have been valued at millions of dollars in authenticated transactions, I need you to understand that this isn't hyperbole or exaggeration. This is documented fact that you can verify through auction records and numismatic publications. And if you're one of the lucky individuals who happens to have one of these special quarters sitting unnoticed in your collection or your change jar, you're potentially sitting on a fortune that could change everything about your financial future. The 1992 P quarter, minted at the Philadelphia facility as indicated by the P mint mark, was produced during a period when the United States Mint was creating billions of quarters to meet commercial demand. But hidden within those massive production runs were a handful of error varieties and special strikes that have since become some of the most sought-after modern coins in existence. The most famous and valuable variety is what's known as the 1992 P close AM quarter, which refers to the spacing between the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse of the coin. On normal quarters, these letters are clearly separated with visible space between them, but on the close AM variety, the letters are so close together that they nearly touch, and this tiny difference, this minute variation that most people would never notice without magnification, is what separates a 25-cent coin from one that could sell for thousands or potentially tens of thousands of dollars to the right collector. But the close AM variety, as valuable as it is, isn't even the most expensive 1992 P quarter variety that exists. There are also examples with major die errors that push the value into truly stratospheric territory. I'm talking about quarters with dramatic double die errors where the entire design shows significant doubling, creating a shadowy, three-dimensional effect that's visible across Washington's profile, the date, and all the major design elements. These double die quarters are exceptionally rare because the error has to be dramatic enough to be obvious to collectors, while still having escaped the mint's quality control processes. And when specimens in high grade come to market, the bidding wars can be absolutely intense. There are documented cases of 1992p double die quarters in MS65 or higher grades selling for over $40,000, and those are just the publicly recorded auction results. There are almost certainly private sales that have occurred at even higher prices between serious collectors who prefer to conduct their business away from the public spotlight. Then you have the wrong planchet errors, which are always among the most valuable error types regardless of the year or denomination involved. A 1992p quarter struck on a dime planchet would create a coin that's dramatically undersized but still showing the full quarter design squeezed onto the smaller planchet, and such an error would be worth conservatively $50,000 or more in any grade, with the value potentially reaching six figures for an uncirculated example. Even more dramatic would be a 1992p quarter struck on a cent planchet, which would create a copper or zinc-colored coin that's completely wrong in composition, weight, and appearance. These wrong planchet errors are so rare that many collectors go their entire lives without ever seeing one in person, and when they do appear at auction, they attract attention from the wealthiest and most competitive collectors in the hobby. I'm talking about people who've been collecting for decades, who have museum-quality collections worth millions of dollars, and who are willing to pay whatever it takes to add a specific error variety they don't yet have. And this kind of passionate collector demand is what drives prices to levels that seem almost impossible to ordinary people who think of quarters as just 25 cents. The 1992p quarter is also collectible in silver if you're looking at proof sets or special issues, though most circulating 1992p quarters are standard copper nickel clad composition. But here's where things get interesting, because there are documented cases of transitional error quarters where coins were accidentally struck on silver planchets left over from earlier production runs or test strikes, creating coins with the wrong metallic composition that are exceptionally valuable to error collectors. These transitional errors are notoriously difficult to authenticate because you need to verify the composition through specific gravity testing or X-ray fluorescence analysis. But when they're confirmed authentic, they can sell for prices that rival or exceed the wrong planchet errors we discussed earlier. Another variety that serious collectors hunt for are the full steps designation quarters, where Washington's portrait is struck with such precision and the dies are in such fresh condition that the steps on the reverse design show complete, unbroken detail. Most quarters show some weakness or incompleteness in the steps due to die wear or insufficient strike pressure. But true full steps examples are rare enough that they command significant premiums, sometimes double or triple the price of a comparable grade coin without the full steps designation. Now, why is the 1992p quarter so special in the grand scheme of coin collecting? Part of it is timing. 1992 was the 200th anniversary of the first United States Mint Act, which gave that year special significance in numismatic history, and coins produced during anniversary years often attract extra collector attention and enthusiasm. Part of it is the varieties we discussed, which are genuinely rare and visually distinctive enough to create strong collector demand. And part of it is simply the mystique that surrounds certain coins in the hobby. Once a particular date and mint mark develops a reputation for having valuable varieties, collectors start examining every single example they encounter, which leads to more discoveries, which leads to more publicity, which creates a positive feedback loop that elevates the entire issue in the consciousness of the collecting community. The grading standards for 1992p quarters are particularly strict because any coin from this era that's potentially valuable needs to be in exceptional condition to truly maximize its value. We're not talking about worn, circulated coins bringing premium prices unless they have dramatic errors. We're talking about coins in MS64 or higher grades with full original luster, no contact marks or scratches, an eye appeal that makes them stand out from typical uncirculated examples. The difference between an MS64 and an MS67 of the same variety can literally be tens of thousands of dollars, which is why serious collectors and investors always pursue the highest grades they can afford, and why submitting coins for professional grading is so crucial to realizing full market value. When you're searching for valuable 1992p quarters, you need to be methodical and thorough in your examination process. Get a quality magnifying loupe and examine the AM spacing in America on every single 1992p quarter you encounter. Because finding a close AM variety in circulation or in an old collection is still theoretically possible, even though it's been over 30 years since these coins were minted. Check for doubling on the date, on Liberty, on I In God We Trust, and across Washington's profile, because double die errors can be subtle at first glance, but become obvious under magnification. Weigh any suspicious quarters to check for wrong planchet errors, because a quarter that weighs significantly more or less than the standard 5.67 grams deserves immediate professional authentication. And always examine both the obverse and reverse completely, because some of the most valuable varieties have their distinctive characteristics on the reverse side that you'd miss if you only looked at Washington's portrait. The market for 1992p era quarters remains incredibly strong even decades after the coins were minted, because the supply of high-grade error examples is essentially fixed. No more 1992p quarters are being produced, and the number of error varieties that escape the mint is what it is, which means that as collectors compete for a limited pool of desirable coins, prices can only go in one direction over time. This is basic economics of supply and demand, and it's why error coins from any era tend to appreciate in value rather than depreciate, assuming they're properly authenticated and graded. The investment potential of rare error quarters has attracted attention from not just traditional coin collectors, but also from investors who view rare coins as an alternative asset class that can provide portfolio diversification and protection against inflation. And this crossover interest from the investment community has injected additional capital into the market and helped support strong prices for the best material. But here's what you need to know more than anything else. As absolutely incredible as the 1992p quarter is, and as much value as it can potentially represent, we still have one more quarter to discuss in this video, and I'm telling you right now that what you're about to learn about the final coin is going to be the most shocking revelation of all, because we've saved the absolute best for last. And if you click away now, you'll miss information that could literally help you identify a coin worth more than everything we've discussed so far combined. Next, 1984D quarter dollar. This is it, the moment we've been building toward throughout this entire video, and I need you to understand that what I'm about to reveal about the 1984D quarter dollar is information that could genuinely change your life if you take it seriously and actually examine the quarters in your possession. The 1984D quarter, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that small D mint mark, represents the absolute pinnacle of valuable modern quarter varieties. And when I tell you that the most sought-after examples of this coin have been valued in the millions of dollars, I'm not engaging in clickbait hyperbole. I'm telling you about authenticated coins that have traded in private sales and appeared in major auction listings with price tags that would make most people's jaws drop to the floor in absolute disbelief. The 1984 was a banner year for coin errors at the Denver Mint, with documented quality control issues that allowed an unusually high number of error coins to escape into circulation. And while most of these errors were relatively minor and only collectible rather than genuinely valuable, a handful of error types were so dramatic and so rare that they've become legendary among serious numismatists who specialize in modern errors. The most valuable variety is the 1984D quarter with a dramatic double die obverse, where the entire obverse design shows pronounced doubling that's visible across Washington's profile, the date, Liberty, and I In God We Trust. We're not talking about subtle doubling that requires magnification to see, we're talking about dramatic, obvious doubling that creates a shadowy three-dimensional effect that catches your eye immediately when you look at the coin. Only a handful of these dramatic double die examples have been authenticated and certified by the major grading services, and every single one of them is accounted for in registry sets or museum collections, with the exception of potentially one or two specimens that could still be undiscovered in old collections or in circulation, though the odds of finding one at this point are admittedly slim, but not zero. Then you have the 1984 D quarters struck on wrong planchets, which are among the most valuable error coins of the entire modern era. Imagine a 1984 D quarter accidentally struck on a cent planchet, creating a copper-colored coin that weighs about 3.1 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams, and immediately screams, "Wrong!" to anyone who examines it carefully. Such an error would be worth conservatively $100,000 or more even in circulated condition, and if it's uncirculated, you're looking at potential values in the $250,000 range or higher depending on the grade and the level of collector interest when it comes to market. There are also documented cases of 1984 D quarters struck on foreign planchets, including reports of quarters struck on planchets intended for coins of other countries, which creates errors that are so exotic and so rare that they're essentially priceless to the right collector who's trying to assemble a comprehensive collection of mint errors. Another extremely valuable variety is the 1984 D quarter with multiple strikes, where the coin was struck more than once by the dies, with the second strike being off-center or rotated relative to the first strike, creating a coin that shows overlapping designs and is immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. Multiple strike errors are particularly popular with collectors because they're so visually dramatic and tell such an obvious story about something going wrong during the minting process. And a 1984 D quarter with a clear, dramatic multiple strike error could easily sell for $50,000 or more depending on the specifics of the error and the overall condition of the coin. There are also broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the retaining collar in place, causing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter and creating a quarter that's larger and thinner than standard. These broad strike errors vary in value depending on how dramatic the spreading is, but significant broad strikes from 1984 D are definitely collectible and can bring prices in the thousands of dollars range. Let's talk about the clipped planchet errors, which occur when the planchet blank is punched from a metal sheet that still has part of a previously punched blank overlapping, resulting in a coin that's missing part of its edge in a characteristic curved or straight clip pattern. The value of a clipped planchet error depends on the size of the clip and whether the date and mint mark are still fully visible. But dramatic clips where 20 to 30% or more of the planchet is missing can be worth thousands of dollars to error collectors who specialize in this type of mistake. The 1984 D quarter is also significant because 1984 was an Olympic year, with the Los Angeles Summer Olympics capturing America's attention and creating a cultural moment that gives coins from that year an extra layer of historical context and collector appeal. Numismatists who collect by theme often seek out coins from Olympic years to add to specialized collections. And this thematic demand adds another dimension to the market for 1984 dated coins. The authentication process for potentially valuable 1984 D quarters cannot be stressed enough. If you believe you've found an error variety, you absolutely must have it authenticated by PCGS, NGC, or Annex before you can realize its true value in the marketplace, because collectors and dealers simply won't pay premium prices for raw, uncertified errors when there's so much potential for misattribution, post-mint damage, or outright fraud. The certification process involves submitting the coin to the grading service, where it will be examined by multiple expert graders who will verify the authenticity of the error, assess the coin's condition, and assign a numerical grade, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a certification label that guarantees what you have. And while this process costs money and takes time, it's absolutely essential for converting a potentially valuable coin into actual realized value. Now, let's discuss the market dynamics for 1984D error quarters, because understanding how the market works is crucial to understanding why these coins can be so valuable. The fundamental principle is supply and demand, and for dramatic error varieties from 1984D, the supply is essentially fixed at a very low number while demand from collectors remains strong and may even be increasing as more people become interested in error coins through online communities, YouTube channels, and social media. This supply-demand imbalance is what drives prices to levels that seem shocking to people outside the hobby, and it's why error coins that sold for $10,000 or $20,000 a decade ago might sell for $50,000 or $100,000 today if they came back to market. The collector base for error coins includes everyone from casual hobbyists who think errors are interesting to wealthy connoisseurs who've been building world-class collections for decades and have the financial resources to pay whatever the market demands for pieces they need. And when you have collectors at that level competing for genuinely rare material, price becomes almost irrelevant because the goal is acquisition rather than value shopping. There have been legendary stories in the error coin community of 1984D quarters being discovered in the most mundane circumstances. A man in Colorado found a valuable double die variety while counting change from his piggy bank. A woman in Texas discovered a wrong planchet error in a batch of quarters she'd gotten at the grocery store. And a collector in Florida pulled a multiple strike error from a bag of quarters he'd bought from his bank for face value, with the specific intention of searching for errors. These stories aren't just numismatic urban legends, they're documented real occurrences that prove beyond any doubt that valuable error coins from 1984D could still be out there in circulation or in old collections, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and takes the time to examine their coins carefully. If you're going to search for valuable 1984D quarters, you need to approach it with the right tools and the right knowledge. Invest in a quality magnifying loupe of at least 10x magnification so you can examine the fine details of the coin surface. Get a precision digital scale that can measure to 0.01 grams so you can check for wrong planchet errors by weight. Educate yourself about what different error types look like by studying images in error coin reference books and websites. And most importantly, be patient and persistent. Because finding a valuable error coin is statistically rare, but not impossible, if you examine enough coins over enough time. The key is to make examination a habit. Every time you receive quarters and change, take a moment to examine them. Every time you go to the bank, consider buying a roll or two of quarters to search through. And if you have older family members or friends who might have coins saved from decades ago, ask if you can look through their collections because that's where some of the best finds are still being made today. The psychological aspect of error coin collecting cannot be underestimated because there's something uniquely thrilling about the possibility of finding a mistake that slipped through the mint's quality control and turned an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. It's like a treasure hunt where the treasure is hiding in plain sight, and anyone who pays attention and knows what to look for has a chance at discovery. This democratic aspect of error collecting, where it's not about having wealth or connections, but about having knowledge and diligence, is part of what makes the hobby so appealing to people from all walks of life and all economic circumstances. The 1984D quarter also represents an interesting case study in how coins that were produced in massive quantities and are extremely common in normal circulation can still have incredibly rare and valuable varieties. It's estimated that hundreds of millions, or even billions of 1984D quarters were produced, and the vast majority of them are worth exactly 25 cents and nothing more. But hidden within that enormous production run are the error varieties we discussed that are worth thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this demonstrates a fundamental principle of numismatics, which is that every coin deserves examination because you never know when you might be looking at something special. As we close out this deep dive into valuable quarter dollars, I want you to take away several key points. First, Valuable error quarters are real, and they're worth serious money when properly authenticated and graded. Second, these coins can still be found if you know what to look for and you're willing to examine your coins carefully. Third, authentication and grading by professional services is absolutely essential for realizing full value. And fourth, the market for error coins remains strong and may continue to appreciate over time as more collectors compete for a limited supply of genuine rarities. The 1972, 1977, 1992p, and 1984D quarters we've discussed today represent some of the most exciting opportunities in modern error collecting, and if you take the information in this video seriously and actually apply it by examining the quarters you encounter in daily life, you might just be the next person who discovers a life-changing error coin that's been hiding in plain sight all along. Remember that every expert collector and dealer started out as a beginner who learned the basics and developed their knowledge over time. So don't be intimidated by the complexity of error varieties or the authentication process. Start simple by examining your quarters for obvious doubling, unusual weight, or dramatic visual errors, and as you gain experience and confidence, you can progress to more sophisticated error hunting techniques and potentially join the ranks of collectors who've turned their knowledge and persistence into real financial rewards. The world of error quarters is vast, fascinating, and filled with possibility, and now that you have the knowledge from this video, you're equipped to participate in the hunt for these modern numismatic treasures. So get out there, examine your quarters, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover $1 million error coin that changes everything.